Did you know that Artist is likely one of the most tragic killers in Dead by Daylight? Stay tuned for more. Hello everyone, my name is Jen, and this is an episode of my new Game Lore series, a series where we discuss the lore of various games. Today's focus, the Dead by Daylight killers, part 1. Without further ado, like and subscribe, and let's get into this. The Ghoul. Aside from being one of the most hated killers in Dead by Daylight, Kandaki's backstory is actually quite sad, all take into consideration Tokyo Ghoul and the Dead by Daylight lore itself. Kaneki was described as a sweet and intelligent young man who studied at Camina University. One day, when visiting a cafe with his friend, he set his eyes upon a beautiful girl named Rize. She ultimately attacked him when they left the cafe, but was killed in a freak accident right after the assault, which sent him straight to the hospital, where Rize's organs were transplanted into Kaneki. This began his famous transformation into the now famous Ghoul. He learned that the staff, previously mentioned at the cafe, were all ghouls, and so they took him under his wing, teaching them their ways. One particularly vicious ghoul named Jason kidnapped Kaneki, tortured him, and experimented on him, before Kaneki himself retaliated and devoured Jason. It's mere moments later that he's engulfed in a thick black fog and dragged into the entity's realm to do its bidding. The Plague. Dearest, her name, was left at a young age on the steps of the Temple of Purgitation, where when she came of age, became a high-ranking priest within its operations. Many cleansings were performed as the outside plague spread, eventually leading her to be the only one able to carry out the cleansings, as the other priests had grown weaker or even perished. During a ceremony, she severed one of her toes as a sacrifice to a god to cleanse a woman. However, that backfired and resulted in her becoming infected herself. She banished herself from the temple, from the city, and left with no followers. They resided in a cave after walking became challenging for her, since her foot was black and swollen. She lay in a pool of her own vomit when she heard a divine whisper, one that was actually the entity, luring her into its realm. With a thick black smoke enveloping her, she now would torture and kill for the entity, believing it to be her god. The Mastermind, also known as Albert Wesker. Now, I only have 7 minutes to tell you about his backstory, so I cannot go into all of it, but I'll summarize it here for you. Umbrella. Right, that's probably a little bit too easy. Wesker, a brilliant and suave man, was a result of Project W, led by the founder of Umbrella, making him a superhuman. He was a double agent for Umbrella and STARS before betraying both and faking his own death. He went underground and started the Ouroboros Project, a virus that, quote, kills the weak and strengthens the strong. This plan, however, obviously fumbled by his nemesis, Chris Redfield. Failing but desperate for his plan to succeed, Wesker made himself the test subject, the Ouroboros virus, contorting his body in monstrous ways. Before he could die, like in Resident Evil 5, he was engulfed in a thick black fog where he was enticed by the entity to kill for it. Seeing the survivors as lesser beings, Wesker does as he's told. For now, anyway. The Houndmaster. Portia, I hope that's how you pronounce her name, I'm so sorry if not, is the daughter of a sailor who accompanied him to a trading trip to Italy, where they also acquired a litter of puppies. Her father told her that she could indeed keep the strongest of the litter for her 12th birthday, and this is how she got snug. Before any of the puppies could be trained, a storm hit their ship, which was only the catalyst for the upcoming horrors Portia would face. Her father was murdered by a man known as Mad Morlock, but Portia herself was spared as they believed she could lead them to fortune. Using her celestial navigational skills, she led them right into a trap, a region believed to be cursed with storms and monsters. As a dark cloud of fog surrounded them, Moloch and his men turned the ship around, abandoning her and leaving her to die slowly. She was struck by a gargantuan tentacle before she passed out, awakening on a shore to Snug licking her face. When she regained her bearings, she found Snug missing, as if he had never even been there in the first place. She survived on the supposed cursed island for years, before disguising herself to join Moloch's crew. She offered jewels and riches to do so, and held a fancy feast where she serves Moloch's own son, Tariq's head. Before she could enact her revenge, he was pulled into a burst of black fog, as she heard a familiar barking in the distance, charging into the black fog to reunite with her dog. This is how she entered the entity's realm. The Trickster. Hyewon Hak grew up with his father pushing him to pursue dance and singing, trying to achieve the fame that his father never could. It seemed to fail before Yoonjin Lee, producer of At Mighty One Entertainment, took interest in him and recruited him into her program. He joined the band called No Spin, which garnered him fame almost immediately. He was showered in riches, adoration, interviews, yet it wasn't enough for him. But he kept up his facade of charm for a long while. One day, entering the studio, he found one of his bandmates under a flaming speaker, crying out in agony. When others pleaded for him to aid, he got a rush similar to the fame when it first struck him. Jiwon was unable to save his friend's life, but was celebrated as a tragic hero afterwards, one that tried to save his friend, but failed. This moment, this adrenaline, the praise, the death led him to rebrand himself into the Trickster, a solo artist. Darkness grew within him after each song, caused by the trauma of his friend's death. He began visiting individuals who lived alone, breaking into their homes, torturing them, recording their screams for his songs. Becoming arrogant, he left gruesome hints for the police to find, but they never quite caught on, leaving more prominent hints at crime scenes and within his music, which resulted in the Mighty One board requesting a private show since they grew suspicious and did not like his emotional and quote-unquote real music. They believed that his more natural aspects of music weren't fit for the industry. The day came and Ji-woon was conveniently late to arrive, as he had purchased nitrous oxide to sedate the board members. When he did arrive, half-conscious members were killed one by Ji-woon and his signature blades. However, he left Yoonjin Lee to watch the massacre, something he considered a gift for her. When it was complete, he stated that this was his art, his magnum opus, and then he approached her to tie the loose ends. However, before he could, a dark fog enveloped them both, bringing them into the entity's realm. The Artist. Now, this is likely the one we've been waiting for. And yes, I saved the best for last, of course, it's my favorite perk, duh. Now in part 2 we will again be discussing another tragic killer, but today let's now focus on the artist. Camina grew up in a tense household, as one day she heard the phone ring inside while she was painting. Rushing inside to answer it, she left her younger brother Matthias outside alone. When she returned, he had drowned in a creek. She rushed over and clutched his body, wailing in sorrow as a few crows circled overhead. Her parents blamed her for his death, and when her mother abandoned the family, her father blamed her mother's departure on her too. For the longest time, she couldn't paint. It would remind her of her brother Matthias. Months later, her grief became too much, and with a "see you soon, Matthias," she prepared to leap off of a bridge. She's, however, stopped when a crow landed on her shoulder, its eyes staring deeply into her soul. A flock of crows joined, and for the first time, Camina didn't feel alone. She returned home to give life a second chance, which she did. She once again picked up painting, and after several years of honing her skills, she started painting murals on streets, elaborate pieces, launching the large-scale surrealist phenomenon. She became so popular that it garnered the attention of an enterprise known as VAC Label. A a shady enterprise that would take art and make the original artists disappear. She exposed them by accepting their commission request and painting a large mural of the label as a grim reaper harvesting the fields of Chilean families. Distraught over her rebellion, she received death threats before being kidnapped by a masked gunman. She was knocked unconscious and awoke in a desert, bound to a chair, her friends at her feet, and tied as well. A man in a long robe recited an unrecognizable chant before severing her hands, saying, "How are you going to paint now?" When the robed man grabbed her chin, she spat in his face, making the man rip out her tongue and saying, "How are you going to recite poems now?" Feeling anguish similar to that of her brother's death, she screamed. Then a flock of crows appeared, seemingly to aid her, as they attacked the robed man, consuming his body. She smiled despite her agony, but resumed her screaming when the crows turned to consume her friends next. When blood loss finally caught up with her, she was engulfed in a dark fog right before the brink of death, when she heard the entity speak to her, giving her another purpose, turning her arms into talons, and setting her loose upon unsuspecting survivors.